In a rational world, the smartest men would lead, the most competent, the most strategic, the most thoughtful. But look around. That's not what happens. Again and again, the world is ruled by the loudest, the boldest, the most outrageous, and often the most foolish. Why? Machiavelli knew the answer. Because power isn't a reward for wisdom, it's a reward for boldness. And the fool, unburdened by doubt, unchained by hesitation, acts without apology. He rises not because he's ready, but because he moves before others even step forward. This is the paradox. The fool climbs while the wise man calculates. The fool commands attention while the wise man waits for the right time. The fool makes bold declarations. He speaks first, acts first, dares first. And in a world addicted to spectacle, that alone is enough to crown him. Machiavelli observed that people are not ruled by logic. They are ruled by perception. Appear strong and you will be treated as such. Even if you are wrong, even if you are reckless, people will follow boldness over brilliance. And that's why the fool wins. Not because he's better, but because he's visible, memorable, The wise man, on the other hand, is too careful. He measures every word. He weighs every risk. And while he waits for certainty, the fool dominates the room. The masses don't follow the smartest. They follow the most certain. And certainty, even when unjustified, is magnetic. This is why fools get elected, why they build empires, why they go viral. They don't second guess. They move loudly, and the world, desperate for direction, rallies behind them. Meanwhile, the wise sit back, convinced the truth will win on its own. But Machiavelli knew the truth doesn't win. Power does. In politics, in business, in life, the person who dares to look foolish gains the momentum the cautious man never earns. Because motion trumps precision, visibility trumps credentials, confidence trumps logic. And when perception shapes reality, the fool can wear the crown simply because he refused to wait his turn. You've seen it. The leader who isn't qualified but commands attention. The boss who isn't brilliant but speaks like he owns the future. The influencer who says ridiculous things but cannot be ignored. The room bends to those who bend reality, not to those who politely explain it. Machiavelli would not be surprised. He would simply ask, who owns the narrative? Because he who owns the story owns the power. And fools, unburdened by nuance, tell bold stories. They speak in absolutes, they paint in black and white, they give people what they crave, certainty in a chaotic world. So the lesson is not to become a fool, the lesson is to understand why the fool rules. It's not logic, it's psychology, it's boldness, it's movement, it's decisiveness. The world does not reward the best. It rewards the most visible and the most committed. Stop asking, why them? Start asking, what did they do that I've been too careful to try? And understand this deeper truth. While the fool wins through motion, the wise man often loses through silence. Not because he lacks insight, but because he underestimates how much of power is performance. He wants to be right. The fool wants to win. And in this world, wanting to win moves mountains. There is also a fearlessness in the fool that the wise man lacks. The fool is not afraid to be seen, mocked, criticized. He doesn't require approval before he acts. This gives him speed, momentum. And that momentum creates presence. Even if he fails, he's still at the center, still forcing others to respond. This is something Machiavelli emphasized over and over. Don't aim to be loved. Aim to be feared or respected. And if you can't be either, aim to be impossible to ignore. The fool often gets there by accident, but the wise man can get there on purpose, if he's willing to learn the game. And that's the point. You don't need to become reckless. You need to stop waiting. You need to stop hiding behind perfection. You need to realize that sometimes looking foolish is the price of becoming powerful. The difference is that the fool accepts that price immediately. The wise man waits too long, and the opportunity moves on without him. So the next time you wonder why someone with less skill, less intellect, or less refinement has more power, remember this. It's not about who's best, it's about who's willing to be seen first. The world does not wait for perfection, it rewards motion, even if that motion is clumsy. This is the second layer of the Machiavellian lesson. Hesitation is often more dangerous than foolishness. The man who acts, even imperfectly, is already ahead of the man who waits for certainty, because action, however flawed, forces adaptation. It forces feedback, it puts him in play. The wise man, by contrast, remains on the sidelines, polishing a strategy that may never see the light of day. This is why so many competent, intelligent people remain spectators while less capable individuals rise, because they think the world is meritocratic, that skill alone earns influence, that credentials speak louder than confidence. But Machiavelli would laugh. He understood centuries ago what still confuses most men today. People don't follow the best, they follow the bold. And boldness, by definition, requires risk. It requires you to say something before you're sure it's perfect, to make the move before you have everyone's blessing, to declare your intention even if the world thinks you're delusional. The fool does this effortlessly. He's not paralyzed by self-pyramid. He doesn't overthink, and because of that, he moves quickly, loudly, often recklessly, and yet he gets results. Does this mean recklessness is the path to power? No. It means that visibility and action, even in small doses, compound faster than genius locked in theory. If you want to lead, you cannot wait until you're qualified in the eyes of others. You must claim that authority before the crowd grants it to you. And that takes courage, not credentials. Machiavelli would remind you, power is not taken with permission. It is seized through audacity, through presence, through repetition. The man who keeps showing up becomes a fixture. And eventually, people stop questioning his competence and simply accept his leadership, not because he's earned it morally, but because he's claimed it visibly. This is why power favors the shameless. The man who can fail in public, take criticism, and show up again without flinching, he earns what the cautious man never will. He earns attention. And attention is the gateway drug to influence. Most people cannot handle that pressure. They want power, but they want it quietly. They want to lead, but only after being validated. They want to be bold, but only if it feels safe. And so they delay. They disappear. They sabotage themselves, one overthought decision at a time. But the fool just goes. He starts the business. He runs for office. He launches the product. He speaks on stage before he's ready. And the crowd, though critical, still watches, still listens, still reacts. Why? Because motion matters more than mastery. It's easy to mock the fool when you're on the outside. It's easy to laugh at his failures, scoff at his confidence, roll your eyes at his missteps. But while you're laughing, he's gaining traction. He's building experience. He's learning in real time while you're still studying the rules. And slowly the room shifts. People begin to tolerate him. Then they accept him, and eventually they follow him. Not because he's wise, but because he's there, This is the painful truth that every strategist must confront. The longer you wait to be perfect, the more room you give to those who are willing to be messy in public. And the world doesn't always choose the best. It chooses the available, the visible, the consistent. Machiavelli's brilliance was in recognizing that people are driven by fear, hunger, and simplicity. They want leaders who project strength, not ones who whisper complexity. And the fool, lacking depth, fills the room with volume. He says it simply. He says it often. He makes people feel something. And that emotional momentum, even if misinformed, becomes power. So how do you apply this? You stop waiting for permission. You stop overthinking every step. You stop asking yourself if you're ready, and you act as if you are. You step into the room first. You speak before you're fully confident. You pitch before the product is perfect. You walk as if you're supposed to be there. And slowly, you train the world to believe it. This doesn't mean abandoning excellence. It means embracing visibility while you're still becoming excellent. Because what most forget is that the fool has one massive advantage. He adapts in public. And over time, some fools become dangerous. Not because they were brilliant at the start, but because they never left the game. If you want power, Machiavelli would say, don't aim to be flawless, aim to be undeniable. And the fastest path to being undeniable is to move when others hesitate, to speak when others go silent, to try when others wait. You want to rise? Make peace with looking foolish. Because in a world where most people are waiting, the one who moves rules. By now you understand why fools rise faster. They're visible, they're loud, and they act before they're fully formed. But there's another Machiavellian insight buried beneath this pattern. One that explains why so many of them stay in power long after the crowd should have woken up. Is this: once you gain power, people rarely question how you got there. They just accept that you're in the seat. And from that position, even a fool gains momentum, because power itself generates legitimacy. The title creates the illusion of competence. The throne rewrites the past. The man who was mocked for being unqualified becomes visionary in hindsight, only because he won. Machiavelli knew this better than anyone. He understood that perception bends around results. And once you have the crown, the people stop scrutinizing your ascent and start defending your authority, not because they truly believe you're wise, but because their minds cannot tolerate uncertainty. They need a ruler. And once a ruler is named, their energy shifts from questioning to rationalizing. That's how foolish people stay in power. The public forgets. The critics grow tired, the opposition loses steam, and the leader, once seen as a joke, becomes normalized, protected by the illusion of control, empowered by the silence of those who once knew better. And in that silence, the game changes. Because now, the fool is no longer the underdog. He's the institution. He controls the narrative, the rewards, the consequences. He appoints allies. He silences dissent. He replaces expertise with loyalty. And just like that, his foolishness is no longer a liability, it's a culture. This is the Machiavellian principle of self-reinforcing power. Once you seize control, you shape the system to protect your position. You don't need to be qualified, you just need to remain unchallenged. And fools, ironically, are often better at this than the wise, because they don't hesitate to remove threats. They don't overthink loyalty. They don't allow disagreement to fester. They act swiftly, sometimes brutally, to ensure survival. The wise man might hesitate. He might tolerate dissent. He might let meritocracy run its course. But the fool? He consolidates. He rewards yes men. He installs loyalists. And in doing so, he creates a fortress, not built on competence, but on control. Machiavelli would approve. He advised princes to be feared, not loved, especially if love made them vulnerable. He knew that maintaining power required decisions that would often be seen as cruel or manipulative. But cruelty, if used early and decisively, was not evil. It was efficient. And this is where the fool thrives. He has no internal war about harsh decisions. He's not worried about appearing noble. His ego is built on survival. And because of that, he becomes incredibly effective at doing the one thing that matters in power: staying there. But here's the warning. If you are not a fool, if you seek to rise as a disciplined, thoughtful, strategic leader, you must understand this game. You must stop assuming that skill alone will earn respect. You must stop believing that logic alone will win loyalty. You must be willing to do what the fool does without becoming one. You must master the performance. Speak boldly, act decisively, reward quickly, remove quietly. Control the room, not through perfection, but through presence. You must project the same confidence as the fool, but underneath it wield real depth. This is how you compete in a world where perception dominates. You don't fight the fool by pointing out his flaws, you fight him by outmoving him, by showing the world what authority looks like with substance behind it, and then by building your own institution. Because here's the harsh truth. The fool doesn't fall unless someone else is willing to play the same game. Better. Not cleaner, not more nobly, just better. You must become that man. One who is not afraid to be seen, not afraid to be challenged, not afraid to lead with force when needed, but also not so foolish as to believe that charisma is a substitute for competence. You blend both. You become the rare hybrid, feared for your strength, respected for your clarity, admired for your results. That man wins. That man rules for decades, not months. So don't scoff at the fool. Learn from him. Learn to act fast. Speak with certainty. Remove what weakens you. Move before you're ready. Frame your narrative before someone else does. Become unignorable. And once you arrive, defend your position with precision, not emotion. Because in the end, the fool shows us something important, that waiting for permission is death, and that power, once taken, does not have to be justified, only protected. The greatest mistake intelligent men make is believing that people will naturally recognize their value. They assume that competence is obvious, that results speak for themselves, that the world will eventually catch up and reward them. But Machiavelli knew better. He understood that power is not given to those who deserve it. It is taken by those who demand it, by those who seize it with boldness, not politeness. This is where the fool has the edge. He doesn't wait to be crowned. He places the crown on his own head. He doesn't ask, "Do I belong here?" He declares, "This is mine." And in declaring it, the world, confused, unsure, reactive, often agrees, not because it has been convinced, but because it has been overwhelmed. Certainty wins over truth. Confidence beats competence. Visibility trumps virtue. Machiavelli wrote, "Men judge more by the eye than by the hand." In other words, appearance matters more than substance. People don't follow reality, they follow perception. And if perception says the fool is strong, he is treated as such. If perception says he's a leader, people fall in line. If perception says he cannot be challenged, they obey. You can be 10 times smarter, more strategic, more capable, and still lose to a man who appears more dominant. Because dominance is rarely questioned once it's accepted. People don't want to rethink what they've already submitted to. It's easier to obey than to reassess. The fool knows this. He leverages it. And this is why fools stay in power longer than anyone expects. Because most people do not want to admit they were deceived. So they double down. They defend the very man they once laughed at. They recast him as a genius. They rewrite his history in their own minds. And over time, the lie becomes the truth. That's how the fool wins. But there's something else, something deeper. It's not just that fools rise. It's that competent men make it easier for them. By hiding, by waiting, by refusing to claim space. Every time you withhold your voice, the fool gets louder. Every time you doubt your worth, the fool claims it. Every time you try to be perfect, the fool takes action. Your hesitation is his opportunity. Your silence is his megaphone. This is the Machiavellian truth that most will never admit. Your virtue, your caution, your humility, it doesn't protect you. It makes you invisible. And in a world where power is seized, invisibility is a death sentence. So, what do? You stop hiding behind modesty. You stop waiting for applause. You stop hoping that being good will be enough. You start playing the game. Loudly, clearly, unapologetically. You embrace perception. You become strategic about your appearance, your posture, your timing. You don't just do the work, you announce it. You don't just build the value, you frame it. You don't just show up, you make your presence unforgettable. Because the world does not respond to talent in the shadows. It responds to power in the spotlight. And here's what Machiavelli would advise. Don't try to outlogic the fool. Outframe him. Don't try to correct him. Overwhelm him. Don't fight for fairness. Fight for influence. Speak more clearly. Move more quickly. Be seen more often. Create your own myth and repeat it until others adopt it as their own. That's how fools win. They repeat their version of reality until everyone forgets it was fake. You can do the same, only with real substance underneath. But substance alone is not enough. If you want to lead, you must learn to weaponize perception. The fool does it by accident. You do it with intention. You control the optics. You control your access. You control the story. And in doing so, you create something most men never achieve: sovereignty. Because that's the real endgame, not just to be in power, but to be untouchable. The fool can become untouchable because he's built a fortress of attention. You must build a fortress of respect. But to get there, you must be willing to play the same visibility game. You must be willing to look too confident. You must be willing to walk into rooms uninvited. You must be willing to be misunderstood, so that eventually you can't be ignored. Because in a world where people follow signals, not truth, the man who controls the signal controls everything. This is not a call to become loud and empty. It is a call to stop being silent and full. Your depth is real. Your strength is real. Your insight is real. But if no one knows it, it might as well not exist. So speak before you're ready. Step forward before you feel qualified. Frame your presence before someone else decides who you are. Create clarity, create impact, create momentum. The fools run loud, but don't let them run alone. Machiavelli would say, power doesn't belong to those who wait. It belongs to those who move, while others hesitate. There comes a point when the fool's rise becomes so normalized, so expected, that the truly competent man begins to doubt his own instincts. He watches chaos turn into authority. He sees loudness mistaken for leadership. And slowly, he begins to internalize a lie that maybe power is meant for people like them, not people like him. That's the final victory of the fool. Not just taking power, but convincing the world that he belongs there. Convincing the thoughtful man to stay quiet. Convincing the strong man to wait. And if you're not careful, you'll start to believe it too. Machiavelli would call this the collapse of will, not through defeat, but through resignation. The moment the strategic man stops competing, the moment he convinces himself that rising with integrity is impossible, that the only way to lead is to become a fraud, that to win he must become the fool. But that's not true. What you must become is something rare, a man with both depth and presence, a man with both insight and aggression, a man with principles and power. That is the true ruler in a Machiavellian world, the one who doesn't abandon virtue but controls when and how to show it, the one who learns from the fool's rise but refuses to mirror his emptiness. That begins with understanding what the fool gets right and doing it better. The fool shows up first, so must you. He acts without permission, so must you. He broadcasts his message daily, so must you. The difference is that your message will carry substance. Your leadership will rest on something real. But don't think you can skip the performance. You cannot. In the modern world, visibility is credibility. The man who speaks becomes the one who is heard. The man who hesitates becomes the one who is forgotten. You must learn to take up space, not through arrogance, but through clarity. You must learn to repeat your values, not once, but relentlessly. You must learn to dominate the room, not by overpowering it, but by commanding attention. Commanding attention does not mean seeking praise. It means refusing to be ignored. It means creating presence wherever you stand. It means building a reputation that precedes you, a voice that cuts through noise, a face that is associated with action, decisiveness, and results. And this requires more than knowledge, it requires posture. Posture is the way you sit, stand, speak, and respond. Posture is the invisible signal that says, I belong here. The fool achieves this instinctively through audacity. You will do it through intention, through mastery, through preparation. You will become undeniable, not just because of what you know, but because of how you carry it. Remember, the throne isn't given to the most virtuous. It's given to the one who looks most certain. You must also understand another Machiavellian law: repetition creates reality. The fool repeats his message until it becomes truth. You must do the same. You must shape how the world perceives you. You must repeat your story, your mission, your position until it becomes fact in the minds of others. Not because you're manipulating, because you're refusing to be misrepresented. The most powerful men in history didn't win by chance. They won by owning the narrative. And in a world where perception drives outcomes, narrative is everything. This means you stop hoping that people get you. You make them get you. You do not leave your identity in their hands. You define it. Every day, every meeting, every platform, every room. This is what separates the quiet genius from the visible leader. The genius creates. The leader commands attention for what he's created. You must be both. And once you combine power and presence, you must hold your position. The fool does this through bluster. You will do it through discipline. unrestricted discipline is the final advantage. Fools burn out, they implode, they sabotage their own reigns. But if you stay calm, consistent, unshakable, you will outlast them. You will not just rise, you will remain. Because in the end, the fool teaches you one thing: that power is always available, always unclaimed, always within reach. But only those who are willing to step forward, to be seen, to risk looking like imposters, only they ever taste it. You don't need to be a fraud to rise, you just need to stop hiding. You don't need to fake strength, you just need to show it before they demand proof. And when you do, they won't ask, is he qualified? They'll say, he's already leading. There comes a moment when you no longer envy the fool. You outgrow him. You see him for what he is, a stepping stone, a living warning, a reminder of what happens when confidence runs without control, when leadership is built on volume instead of vision. He teaches you through contrast, and the lesson is clear. Rise like him, but last unlike him. Because the final phase of power is not taking the throne, it's holding it. And while the fool may get there first, he rarely stays. Why? Because his rise is built on bravado, on noise, on emotion. And when the pressure hits, when the expectations arrive, when the spotlight turns, he breaks. He lashes out. He collapses under the weight of what he claimed. Machiavelli knew this. He wrote of princes who gain their positions not through wisdom, but through luck or force. And he warned, what is gained without discipline is lost without warning. Fortune may crown you, but only strategy can keep the crown. That's where you separate yourself, because you haven't risen through luck. You've studied, you've prepared, you've endured, you've learned from every loss. You've watched the fools play loud, and now you understand what they never will. That power is not the moment you are noticed. It's the years you remain unshaken. The crowd loves the fool in the beginning. He's entertaining, he's bold, he says what others are afraid to say. But eventually, they look for substance, and when they don't find it, they turn. What once made the fool magnetic becomes annoying. His unpredictability, once thrilling, becomes reckless. And this is when the strong man takes over. Quietly, consistently, without panic, without noise. He steps in with calm, with clarity, with presence. Not the presence of theatrics, but the presence of a man who does not flinch. You become this man. You've learned what the fool is too proud to accept, that real power is boring. It's routine, it's repetition, it's preparation. The fool wants the crowd. You want the outcome. He wants applause. You want command. He wants control. Today, you want legacy forever. And that's why you win. Because in the end, power doesn't belong to the one who arrives first. It belongs to the one who remains long after the noise dies down. The one who built his house not on attention, but on discipline. Not on reaction, but on foresight. You've learnt from the fool, now let him fade. Let him chase his next trend. Let him burn out under the weight of his own performance. Let him fall. And when the smoke clears, you will still be standing. Not because you were louder, but because you were real. Machiavelli would have called you dangerous, not for what you say, but for what you control, for what you've built silently, for what you've made untouchable. That is your edge. So now ask yourself, are you willing to be seen before you're perfect? Are you willing to speak before they give you permission? Are you willing to rise in public and prepare in private? And most importantly, are you willing to outlast the fool who took the shortcut? If you are, then you've understood the entire game. This world doesn't reward the best. It rewards the most willing, the most present, the most persistent. But it remembers only the one who stayed. So if this message shifted something in you, if it exposed the part of you that's been playing small, waiting quietly while fools took your seat, then say it clearly. Type in the comments, "I will outlast the noise." Say it with certainty. Let it be a line in the sand. And don't stop now. The next video will take you deeper into how to lead like a strategist, not just think like one. Go watch it, because fools rise fast. But you're here to rule.